questions 86, 131, 148 and 159. So I'll call Deputy Darren O'Rourke to introduce this one.
Thanks, Chair. The four questions grouped together. Mine is number 153. They're on the issue of the TRIPS waiver, and I wanted to ask the Taoiseach if he will advocate for a TRIPS waiver to ensure maximum rollout of COVID-19 vaccine, and if he'll make a statement on the matter.
Thanks, Deputy. Universal and equitable access to vaccines is crucial in the global fight against COVID-19, and governments in the developed world must do more to ensure this. The government is a very strong supporter of vaccine equity in the world. Morally, we need to make sure that the world is vaccinated. We weren't able to defeat diseases like smallpox or polio on a national basis. It could only be done on an international basis. That's why what we need to do with COVID as well. Any country that is not fully vaccinated is a potential reservoir for reinfection. So it's the right thing to do morally, and also from a point of view of self-interest. As the Deputy is aware, international trade is a competence of the European Union under the treaties. And in exercising that competence, the European Commission engages fully with Member States, including Ireland, through a variety of committees and working parties and groups, including on intellectual property. As part of the European Union, we're very strong advocates of what's called compulsory licensing. This would allow governments to license the production of vaccines on a generic basis, whether the pharmaceutical companies agree to it or not. It could be very useful for countries like South Africa and India, which have vaccine-making capacity, to be allowed to license the production of those vaccines in the plants in their countries, irrespective of whether the companies approve. That's what we, the European Union, are supporting and advocating at present. I have an open mind on the alternative suggestion of a TRIPS waiver, and I've always said that if we receive a WTO proposal, we will examine it. That hasn't happened yet. The TRIPS waiver in itself, just like compulsory licensing, will not result in any new vaccine plants being built or made operational, so it won't be enough on its own. What's needed is a comprehensive response involving capacity building, know-how, qualified scientists and technicians, capital, and experienced medicine and safety regulators. All of those things are needed to get vaccines from the lab into people's arms. That's why it's better to have governments and pharmaceutical companies working together to find a solution rather than trying to create conflicts between government and industry. I don't think that's the right approach. We need a global solution that is comprehensive, intelligent, workable, and does not disincentivise innovation. To date, Ireland has contributed €7 million in funding to COVAX in 2021 and will donate 1.3 million vaccines this year to low-income countries as part of the COVAX programme, with more to come in 2022. The first 500,000 Irish doses donated through the facility reached Nigeria on the 29th of November, with further donations of Irish vaccines taking place in the coming weeks. In addition, Ireland has delivered on its commitment to donate 335,000 COVID vaccines to Uganda, and Irish people have shown enormous generosity in donating through the UNICEF programme, the Give a Vaccine, Get a Vaccine, Give a Vaccine programme, which I strongly support and endorse. The European Union is committed to 200 million doses to reach low and middle income countries by the end of this year, mainly through the COVAX initiative, and investing €1 billion to ramp up mRNA production capacity in Africa. As a government, we have consistently opposed export bans that have been advocated by others, including some of those now advocating a TRIPS waiver.
Connolly, you say you and the EU are very strong supporters of vaccine equity and that you want to find a solution. But the truth is, the EU and the Irish government are an active barrier to solutions. If you listen to what Mike Ryan of the WHO says, it's a tragedy and it's an abomination that today there are frontline workers going to work in COVID wards in many countries that still have not been vaccinated. It's a disgrace. Mary Robinson said the European Union represents the biggest roadblock to an effective solution to ramp up the supply of life-saving vaccines, that each day 6 times more booster shots are being administered in high-income countries than first doses in low-income countries.
Catherine Connolly.
Minister, you know there's a huge push on the ground for the TRIPS waiver. It has come from so many organisations. Over 100 countries, according to Médecins Sans Frontières, have asked for this. Over the nursing unions were the latest in relation to about 30 different nursing unions throughout the world, the People's Vaccine Alliance and so on, and in our own country, 400 leading scientists in Ireland. No progress has been made in relation to this. I welcome the figures you've given us today in terms of the vaccines, that we have 1.3 vaccines this year given over to low-income countries. You might give us a breakdown of that. But when you tell us that trade is a competence of the EU, my answer to you is health is not. And this is a health issue. Trade is subservient, in my opinion, in this regard. And when you talk about not interfering with the entrepreneurial spirit, that also is very questionable to me, because all of the vaccine production has been financed, as I understand it, predominantly by public money.
Deputy Emer Higgins.
Thanks very much, Cathaoirleach. Taoiseach, I totally agree with you when you say that we need to continue to invest in innovation and science, and we need to continue to incentivise that, because I suppose that innovation and that investment in science is what we all rely on when it comes to the research and development of the vaccines that are saving lives across the world. And it is a worldwide pandemic, and that is why it is so important that initiatives like COVAX are happening, that we are donating 1.3 million vaccines to poorer countries, because none of us get out of this until all of us get out of it.
Now, Deputy David Stanton, you want to go in?
I could ask the Taoiseach if the government here is proactive in examining ways of sharing intellectual property across the globe, with countries in particular like India, who I understand could have the capacity to produce quite an amount of vaccines. And could he also indicate the government's position with regard to CTAP? Thank you.
Yeah, Taoiseach, a number of questions there.
Thanks very much, deputies. I just have to say that I disagree with the analysis by Deputy O'Rourke there. The fact is the EU is the biggest exporter of vaccines.
Okay, just let the Taoiseach.
The EU is the biggest exporter of vaccines, when other countries like the United States, on some sort of national security grounds, stopped vaccines being exported to developing countries. The EU exported as many vaccines as we made for ourselves. I think it's, I know Sinn Féin's a Eurocritical party, but that's really going too far. The EU has exported more vaccines than any other major player in the world, and Ireland has been part of that. We've donated 1.7 million vaccines, and we'll do more in 2022. I don't think I actually said anything about the entrepreneurial spirit. I did say something about incentivising innovation, and I do think that's important. It's very possible that in 2022 we will turn to companies like BioNTech, like Pfizer, like AstraZeneca, like Sanofi and others, and ask them to develop a vaccine to the variants, and ask them to develop treatments to COVID. And we can't just dismiss concerns about disincentivising innovation. It is a serious thing that needs to be considered.
Deputy O'Rourke.
Thanks, Chair. Taoiseach, I have to say I think it's deeply insulting for those people in low-income countries that your response is patronising that we are making donations and contributions. These countries are fit to and looking for the opportunity to provide for themselves, and they're in a position to do it. And we have prevented them before in terms of AIDS and other pandemics. And we're doing it this time again, and it's just simply disgraceful. And I believe it's completely out of step with the will and the spirit and the passion of the Irish people. The Irish people would go for a TRIPS waiver in the morning, and you're letting them down.
Disappointed in your response. We know that COVAX has done so much, but what's not happened is there's no assessment of has it met the need, and clearly it hasn't, because the figures speak. Just 8% of people in low-income countries will have received at least one dose by the end of 2021, compared with 76% for high-income countries. I'm after mentioning just some of the organisations are crying out for a change of approach and crying out for the TRIPS waiver to be looked at as a matter of urgency. They're hardly doing that for the good of their health, which is a very bad, probably, use of words in the context of COVID-19. And we also know that there's no transparency at all in relation to the deals being done bilaterally with individual pharmaceutical companies. And again, there's absolutely no acknowledgement of the vast amounts of public money that have gone in to incentivise with an indemnity clause that's never ending, and none of this has ever been discussed. Surely you might address some of those issues and why we are not leading in relation to the TRIPS waiver.
Okay. Taoiseach, you didn't use up all your time, so you have 2 minutes.
Thanks. I can see where that this is going, Cahirlock, and I'm disappointed that this, rather than having a rational debate, weighing up the pros and cons of options like a TRIPS waiver, options like compulsory licensing, that it's going to turn into.
It's an emergency.
That's going to turn into people wanting to shout at each other and make out that they're more virtuous than the next person, and engaging in personalised remarks. I think it is. I think this is disappointing. Like I knew before I came in here that rather than having a rational debate on the right solution here, it was going to turn into I'm more virtuous than you and I'm a better person than you, and I think that's sad. I think that's sad.
Hold on, Taoiseach. Taoiseach, but Deputy, there's a structure here, okay? And you had your allocated time. Now, in deference to the Taoiseach, he's entitled
this is just showboating, unfortunately, and I wonder, is the Deputy even capable of having a rational debate as to what the different options are here in terms of compulsory licensing, TRIPS waiver, other options as well? And what's required is a
Irish research on the issue. And it says you need to act now.
Deputy, I can't allow this now, in fairness. Otherwise, we have a kind of a free-for-all for everybody. There's time allocated. It's very kind of tight time, and it's tight.
It's not a fair debate.
Well.
It's not fair. You're being completely disingenuous. That's
without interruption now, and I don't want to say...
I don't think you want to debate at all, Deputy. You just want to make out that you're the person who's virtuous. We're nasty people looking after companies rather than people, and it's just part of the kind of political games you play, and that's the truth of it, and it's disappointing, but that's the alternative that your party offers, unfortunately. We all share the same objective here, in my view. That is to vaccinate our own population. And governments do have a responsibility to look after their own population and their own citizens first. And that's what we're doing. And we also have a wider responsibility on a global level to make sure that we vaccinate the entire world, because this virus will not be defeated until the world is vaccinated. And it's not a case of one or the other. And it's not a case of bad people and good people. It's not the case of governments against industry. We need people working together on this.